My mom and dad told me not to show up at my golden sister's engagement party because they don't love me. So I got furious and canceled everything. Blocked all accounts. Now they can't pay for anything and are begging on their knees. Hey Reddit. I've been lurking on Reddit for a long time, but this is my first time posting. What I'm about to share happened over the past 3 years, and I'm finally ready to tell the whole story. Fair warning, this is going to be long, but I promise it's worth reading to the end. You'll want to buckle up for this one. I need to give you some background first so you can understand just how messed up the situation really was. I'm a 27-year-old man, and I work as an electrical contractor for a mid-sized company here in Nevada. I make decent money, but I've earned every single dollar of it through hard work and dedication. I started as an apprentice when I was just 19 years old, working my way up through residential wiring, commercial projects, and eventually job site coordination. I don't have a college degree. I just showed up every day and busted my ass for 8 straight years to get where I am today. My sister Megan is 24, and I'm not exaggerating when I say she has never worked a real job in her entire adult life. She's what you might call a professional girlfriend. Someone who bounces between different guys who are willing to fund her lifestyle while she posts Instagram photos at expensive steakhouses and pretends she's some kind of influencer. She has exactly 2,100 followers and genuinely believes she's destined to become the next Kardashian. Her Instagram bio literally says, "Living my best life entrepreneur blessed," even though she's never started a business or worked a single day in her life. To understand the family dynamics here, you need to know that our parents divorced when I was 17. My mom, Carol, remarried this guy, Steve, who sells motorcycles and thinks he's some kind of business genius. They live together in a double-wide trailer outside Reno and are constantly broke because Steve keeps investing their money in various get-rich-quick schemes. We're talking Bitcoin mining rigs, motorcycle flipping businesses, multi-level marketing, you name it, Steve has lost money on it. My dad, Frank, lives alone in a small house about an hour away from the rest of us. He's a retired plumber who doesn't talk much, but he's solid and dependable. Most importantly, he's the only person in my family who doesn't treat me like a walking ATM machine, which becomes very relevant to this story. Here's where things start to get absolutely ridiculous. Megan has been engaged 4 separate times. 4 different guys, 4 different engagement rings, with each engagement being more expensive than the last. She's developed this obsession with having every single event in her life be Pinterest perfect, and somehow I always end up being the one footing the bill for her elaborate fantasies. The first engagement happened when she was just 19 years old. The guy was named Brad, and he worked at a CrossFit gym. That relationship lasted 7 months and ended up costing me $2,800 for an engagement party that Megan absolutely insisted on having. The second engagement was to some guy named Marcus who owned a food truck. That one lasted 9 months and cost me $4,700 for various pre-wedding events and celebrations. The third engagement was to Kevin, a personal trainer. That relationship actually made it almost a full year and ended up costing me $7,500 because Megan decided she needed to have a practice wedding to test out different vendors and see how everything would look. Each and every time, Megan would come to me crying about how this was the one, how she just needed help making her dreams come true. And each time, I believed her because I'm apparently a complete idiot when it comes to my sister's manipulation tactics. But this last engagement was different from all the others. This time, she was marrying Derek, some finance guy from Arizona whose family actually had money. Real money. Not the fake lifestyle Megan had been pretending to live. Megan thought she'd finally hit the jackpot and spent 9 solid months planning this wedding like it was going to be featured in Vogue magazine. Everything had to be luxury, exclusive, or whatever buzzword she'd learned from TikTok that particular week. She would constantly send me Pinterest boards with captions like, "This is my vision, and I won't settle for less than perfection." The problems started right from day 1 of the wedding planning process. Derek's family had set a budget of $42,000 for the entire wedding, which for most normal people would be incredibly generous, more than enough to have a beautiful, memorable celebration. But for Megan, this budget was basically equivalent to living in poverty. She threw a legitimate 4-day tantrum because that amount wasn't enough to fund the elaborate vision she had created in her mind. She wanted a wedding dress that cost $27,000, a photographer whose services were $16,000, and a venue that charged $32,000 just for the day rental alone. When Derek tried to be reasonable and told her they needed to scale back their expectations and work within the budget his family had generously provided, She completely lost it. That's when she called me, absolutely sobbing into the phone. "Blake, you don't understand," she cried, her voice breaking with what seemed like genuine despair. "This is supposed to be the most important day of my life. I can't get married in some cheap community center like I'm some kind of peasant. I should have hung up right there and saved myself months of financial and emotional torture, but Megan has always known exactly which buttons to push with me. You're the only one who really gets me," she continued, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when she wanted something from me. "You understand that I deserve beautiful things. Derek's family just doesn't appreciate quality the way we do. They don't understand what it means to have standards. So like the complete sucker I apparently am, I started helping her out financially. At first, it seemed relatively minor. Just $1,100 for dress alterations because the designer dress she'd chosen needed to be customized to match her specific vision. Then it was $2,200 for upgraded flowers because the ones that fit within the budget looked cheap and wilted, according to her standards. After that came $5,300 for a better photographer because the one they could actually afford apparently took pictures that looked like they came from a Walmart portrait studio. Every single time I sent money to help cover these expenses, Megan would post on social media about how blessed she was and how everything was coming together perfectly. She never once mentioned where the money was actually coming from or acknowledged that her brother was quietly funding her Pinterest-perfect wedding. Her Instagram stories became a constant stream of updates. "OMG, you guys! We found the perfect orchids." And "The photographer we booked is absolutely amazing." And "This dress is everything I dreamed of and more." Meanwhile, I was quietly transferring thousands of dollars from my savings account. Money I'd been carefully putting away for years to eventually buy my own condo, so that my sister could have her dream wedding. I was literally sacrificing my own future financial security so she could maintain her image on social media. Then came what I now think of as the venue disaster. The location Megan had set her heart on required a $19,500 deposit upfront, which was nearly half of Derek's family's entire budget just for the venue alone. When his parents said absolutely not, that this was completely unreasonable and would blow their budget before they'd even started planning the actual event, Megan called me at work completely hysterical. "Blake, please, you have to help me," she sobbed into the phone while I was trying to finish up an electrical job. "My entire wedding is ruined. Derek's parents are being so unreasonable and cheap. They don't understand that this venue is the only place that matches my aesthetic. I've been planning around this specific location for months now." She was crying so hard she could barely get the words out coherently. "You know how important this is to me. You're the only one who really cares about my happiness. Everyone else just wants me to settle for mediocre things. I can't have a mediocre wedding, Blake. I just can't." Like an absolute fool, I paid the deposit. $19,500 disappeared from my account in one afternoon because my sister couldn't handle the idea of getting married somewhere that didn't meet her impossibly high standards. Over the course of 7 months, I ended up spending a staggering $49,200 on Megan's wedding. Let me put that in perspective for you. That's more than half of my annual salary as an electrical contractor. This was money I'd been carefully saving for years with the goal of buying my own condo. Money I'd put aside for my own future that was now completely wiped out. But throughout this entire process, Megan kept telling me I was her hero, that she'd never forget how much I loved her and supported her dreams. She made promise after promise that Derek's family would reimburse me for everything once they saw how perfect the wedding turned out to be. Spoiler alert, they never had any intention of paying me back a single penny. Last Wednesday, I was on a job site finishing up some electrical work when I got a text message from my mom that immediately put me on edge. It simply said, "Emergency family meeting tonight. Your presence is required." I should have known something was seriously wrong. Mom only calls these so-called family meetings when she wants to gang up on someone about something, and apparently this time I was the target. I showed up at Mom's place that evening still covered in drywall dust and construction grime from the job site. Megan's BMW was parked in the driveway, the same car she'd bought with money from her previous ex-boyfriend before she dumped him for Derek. When I walked inside, everyone was sitting around the kitchen table like this was some kind of intervention. Mom was there, along with Steve, Megan, and even Derek had showed up for this little ambush. Megan was wearing what looked like a $350 sweater and had obviously just come from getting her nails done. Everything about her appearance screamed expensive, which was particularly galling considering I was the one actually paying for her lifestyle. "Blake, sit down!" Mom said in that fake sweet voice she always uses when she wants something from me. What's this about? I asked, genuinely confused. I've got work early tomorrow morning. Megan spoke up first, not even bothering with any pleasantries or small talk. Derek and I have been talking to his parents, and we've decided that maybe having you at the wedding isn't the best idea. I just stared at her for a moment, not sure I'd heard correctly. What the hell does that mean? Language! Mom snapped automatically, like I was still a child. No, seriously, Megan, what does that mean? Derek cleared his throat importantly. He's one of those guys who wears polo shirts unironically and talks like he's in a board meeting even during casual conversation. Blake, we really appreciate everything you've done to help out with the wedding planning process. But Megan's been expressing some concerns about certain behavioral patterns you've been exhibiting lately. My behavioral patterns? I repeated, still trying to process what was happening. Megan jumped right in with her explanation. You've been acting really possessive about the wedding planning, like calling all the vendors and checking up on things constantly. It's my wedding, not yours. You're being weird about it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was checking on things because I paid for them. With my own money. See? Megan said to Derek, gesturing at me like I was proving her point. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're being super aggressive and weird about everything. Steve decided this was the perfect moment to add his completely worthless opinion to the conversation. Son, I think you've gotten a little too emotionally invested in this whole situation. It's coming across as desperate, to be honest. Desperate? Because I spent my life savings on my sister's wedding? Mom nodded along supportively. We're all worried you might cause a scene at the reception. You know how you get when you're emotional about things. How I get? When have I ever caused a scene at anything? Like at my engagement party, Megan said accusingly. You were all moody and antisocial because you weren't sitting at the head table with the immediate family. I wasn't moody, I protested. I just thought it was weird that your boyfriend of 4 months was sitting with the family and I wasn't. That's exactly what I mean! Megan threw her hands up dramatically. You always make everything about yourself. This is supposed to be about me and Derek and our love story. I looked around the table at these people, my own family, and tried to process what was happening. They were seriously sitting here telling me I wasn't welcome at a wedding I had personally funded with nearly $50,000 of my own money because I was supposedly too invested in it. Let me get this straight, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. You don't want me at the wedding? It's not that we don't want you there, Mom said in her most condescending tone. We just think it would be better for everyone involved if you took some space right now. Let Megan have her special day without any unnecessary drama. But you still want me to pay for everything. There was dead silence around the table. You could have heard a pin drop. Finally, Megan spoke up. And this was the moment when I should have realized exactly what kind of person she really was. The money was a gift, Blake, she said with a straight face. You can't just take back a gift because you're having hurt feelings. A gift? I gave you $49,200 as a gift? You offered, she snapped back defensively. Nobody forced you to do anything. You kept saying you wanted to help make my dreams come true. Because you kept crying about how your dream wedding was ruined every single time you didn't get exactly what you wanted. Derek stood up and straightened his polo shirt like he was about to deliver a presentation. Look, Blake, I think you really need to calm down right now. You're proving Megan's point about your emotional instability. That's when something inside me just completely snapped. Get out, I said to Derek, my voice deadly calm. Excuse me? He replied, looking genuinely shocked that I would dare speak to him that way. You heard me perfectly. Get out of my mother's house before I physically remove you myself. Blake! Mom yelled, but I was way past caring about her disapproval. I stood up from the table, and Derek actually took a step backward. For context, I'm 6'3" and spend my days doing manual labor. I'm not a small guy. Derek, on the other hand, looks like a strong breeze would knock him over. All of you can go to hell, I said, looking around the table at each of their faces. Megan, enjoy your wedding. I hope it's everything you dreamed of. With that, I walked out of the house and drove home while my phone buzzed nonstop with calls that I had absolutely no intention of answering. That night, I sat alone in my crappy apartment, the same apartment I was still living in because I'd given away my condo down payment to my sister, and had what you might call an epiphany. These people didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource to be extracted from and then discarded when I became inconvenient or started asking uncomfortable questions. Well, if they wanted to treat me like a vendor instead of a brother, I was going to start acting like one. The next morning, I started going through all the receipts and payment records I'd kept for Megan's wedding expenses. I'm pretty organized when it comes to money. You have to be when you're managing electrical contracts and dealing with suppliers. What I found when I dug into the details made me want to throw my laptop out the window. That $5,300 I'd given her for upgraded flowers? She'd actually spent $1,400 on flowers and used the remaining $3,900 on a spa weekend in Aspen for her and her bridesmaids. The $8,500 for catering upgrades? She'd used $3,200 for actual catering improvements and spent $5,300 on a designer handbag that she'd posted on Instagram with the caption, "Treating myself because I deserve it, blessed bride Toby luxury life." The $13,000 for the better photographer was perhaps the most egregious example. She'd booked a $4,200 photographer and spent the remaining $8,800 on her bachelorette party in Vegas. This woman had been systematically stealing from me for months while posting about her perfect life on social media for all her followers to see. I started taking screenshots of everything. Every Instagram post where she was showing off things she'd bought with my money. Every Venmo transaction that didn't match what she'd told me the money was for. Every lie she'd told me about wedding expenses. I was building a comprehensive record of her deception. But then I found something that made my blood pressure spike so high I thought I might need medical attention. Megan had started a private Instagram account called Megan's Perfect Wedding, where she was documenting the entire planning process for her closest friends. One of my cousins had shown it to me months ago, thinking I'd want to see how happy my sister was about her upcoming wedding. I scrolled back through months of posts and found one from 4 weeks earlier. It was a photo of her getting a $450 massage at some fancy spa, with this caption, "Wedding stress is so real, but thank God for my sweet brother who always takes care of me." Some people are just born to be providers, and others are born to be provided for. I'm so lucky to have Blake funding my dream wedding while I focus on being the perfect bride. He literally pays for everything, so I don't have to worry about money at all. Family blessed spoiled lucky life. Funding my dream wedding. She literally called me her funding source to her friends on the internet. But the comments under that post were even worse and made me realize the full extent of her manipulation. Her friend Brittany had commented, "Oh my God, you're so lucky, I wish my brother was rich." Megan's response, "He's not rich, lol. He just doesn't have a life, so he has tons of money to spend on me. It's actually kind of sad, but it totally works out for me." Another friend named Madison asked, "Will he pay for your honeymoon too?" Megan replied, "Already got him to cover the flights and hotel, I just have to cry a little, and he opens his wallet every time. Men are so easy to manipulate if you know what you're doing. It's like having a personal ATM that thinks it's your brother." I sat there staring at my phone screen, reading those words over and over again. She was bragging about manipulating me. She was literally laughing about it with her friends. She was giving them tips on how to manipulate their own family members for money. In her mind, I wasn't her brother. I was her mark, her personal ATM machine, her financial victim. That afternoon, I drove up to the wedding venue. It's this fancy place up in the mountains with all glass and exposed wooden beams, the kind of place where rich people get married and normal people go bankrupt trying to afford it. I asked to speak with the event manager and showed him my driver's license and the credit card I'd used for all the payments. "I'm the one who paid the deposit for the Megan Thompson wedding," I told him. "Oh yes, Mr. Johnson. How can I help you today?" "I need to see a copy of the contract." He brought it over and laid it out on his desk for me to review. There it was in black and white legal text. The contract was entirely in my name. I was listed as the primary responsible party for all payments and decisions regarding the event. Megan wasn't even mentioned anywhere on the paperwork. "What would happen if I decided to cancel?" I asked casually. "Well, this close to the event, we'd have to keep the deposit and any payments already made for catering and setup," he explained. "But we could refund about 65% of your total payments within 7 to 10 business days." I looked at the payment schedule that was attached to the contract. They were still expecting a final payment of $23,500 the week before the wedding. And if that final payment isn't made on time, the event would be automatically canceled and the space would be released to other clients. I thanked him politely and left. On the drive home, my phone rang, and I was so shocked to see Megan's name on the caller ID that I actually answered it. "Blake! Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you answered," Megan said, her voice sickeningly sweet like nothing had happened the night before. "What do you want, Megan?" "Listen, I talked to Derek, and we decided that maybe we overreacted a tiny bit last night. You can totally come to the wedding." Can I now? I replied flatly. Yes, but we need to establish some ground rules first. Like, you need to promise not to make any speeches or mention anything about money stuff during the reception. And maybe don't talk to Derek's parents too much. They're kind of weird about financial things. Weird about what exactly? They just don't want people to know that we needed help paying for anything. It's an image thing, you know? They're very private about family business and financial matters. So, not only had they originally decided I wasn't welcome at the wedding, now they wanted to pretend I didn't exist and had never helped them financially. They wanted me there as a silent observer who would act like I'd never contributed a penny to their perfect day. Also, Megan continued cheerfully, completely oblivious to how insulting this entire conversation was, we're going to need that final payment for the venue by Friday. It's like $23,500 or something. Can you handle that for us? Let me get this straight. She wanted $23,500 more after telling me I wasn't welcome at the wedding. After she'd spent months bragging to her friends about manipulating me. After she'd stolen money I'd given her for wedding expenses and spent it on herself. After calling me her personal ATM machine who was too pathetic to have a life of my own. Megan, I said as calmly as I could manage, go to hell. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked her number. Then I called the venue back. I'd like to cancel the Megan Thompson wedding, I told the venue manager when he answered. Oh no, is everything all right, Mr. Johnson? Everything's perfect. I just won't be paying for it anymore. I understand completely. I'll process the cancellation right away and have our accounting department calculate your partial refund. Just like that, it was done. No venue, 4 days before the wedding. Next, I logged into my online banking and started systematically canceling every automatic payment I'd set up for Megan over the years. Her car payment, which she'd convinced me to take over temporarily 9 months ago when she was between opportunities. Her credit card payments, her gym membership, her phone bill, even her Spotify premium subscription. Every single recurring payment that I'd been quietly covering for months or years. Then I remembered something that made me smile for the first time all week. About a year ago, Megan had gotten into some legal trouble, a car accident where she was at fault but didn't have insurance coverage. She was going to get sued for approximately $16,500, so I'd hired her a lawyer to handle the case. The lawyer had required an $11,000 retainer up front, and since Megan's credit was absolutely terrible, I'd had to put the retainer in my name. The case had eventually gotten settled out of court, but there was still $7,800 left in that legal account. Money that was technically mine since the retainer had been paid under my name, and the case was now closed. I called the law office and had them transfer the remaining balance back to my checking account. While I was at it, I remembered that I'd co-signed on Megan's apartment lease 2 years ago when she couldn't qualify for the rental on her own income. I contacted the property management company to discuss my options for removing my liability from the lease. They explained that Megan would need to refinance the lease independently and meet their income requirements on her own. Since she had no verifiable income whatsoever, this was going to be a major problem for her. By Friday morning, Megan had discovered that none of her credit cards were working properly. She called me from Mom's phone since I'd blocked her number. Blake, what the hell is wrong with you? She demanded. Nothing's wrong with me, Megan. I'm fantastic, actually. My credit cards aren't working and someone canceled my car payment. Yeah, that was me. You can't do that! That's my car! Actually, it's my car payment. Has been for 9 months now. Blake, I swear to God, if you don't fix this right now... You'll what? Uninvite me from your wedding? Too late for that? What do you mean, too late? Call your venue, Megan. I hung up on her. About 25 minutes later, Mom called me. Blake Anthony Johnson, you get yourself over here this instant. No thanks. Your sister is having a complete nervous breakdown. She says you canceled her entire wedding. I canceled my financial contribution to her wedding. There's a difference. You cannot do this to family. Family? Mom, Megan literally told her Instagram friends that I don't have a life and that I'm easy to manipulate. She called me her personal ATM machine. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. She didn't mean it like that, Mom finally said weakly. She meant it exactly like that. You all did. I hung up on her too. That afternoon, I got a call at work from Derek. Somehow, he'd managed to get my office number. Blake, we really need to talk about this situation. No, we really don't. Look, I don't know what's going on between you and Megan, but you're affecting a lot of innocent people now. My family flew in from Arizona. We have relatives coming from all over the country for this wedding. That sounds like a you problem, Derek. The venue says you canceled everything and they won't even talk to us because the contract is entirely in your name. Yep, that's accurate. Blake, be reasonable here. What do you want? Money? We can work out some kind of payment plan. What I wanted was to never see any of these people again. Derek, let me give you some free advice. Run. Megan is going to spend your entire marriage treating you like a human credit card. This wedding disaster is just the beginning. You're completely insane, he said and hung up. By Friday evening, the panic had really set in on their end. I was getting calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in literally years. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all wanting to know what was happening with the wedding. The story Megan was telling everyone was that I had sabotaged her wedding because I was mentally unstable and jealous of her happiness. She was posting increasingly unhinged messages on Instagram about fake family members, betrayal, and people who can't stand to see others succeed. But here's the beautiful part. Derek's family was pulling out of the wedding entirely. Apparently, when they found out that the groom's family wasn't actually paying for anything, and that the whole event was being funded by the bride's unstable brother, who had now canceled everything, they decided this wasn't the kind of family they wanted to be associated with. Derek called off the engagement Friday night. Megan showed up at my apartment Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m., pounding on my door like an absolute maniac. I didn't answer, but I could hear her yelling in the hallway for everyone in the building to hear. Blake, I know you're in there. You ruined my entire life. You destroyed everything. My neighbor came out of his apartment and told her to keep it down or he'd call building security. This is between me and my brother, she screamed at him like a woman possessed. Lady, I don't care if it's between you and the Pope, he replied. Shut up or I'm calling the cops. She kept yelling and carrying on for another 20 minutes before finally giving up and leaving. That's when I knew I'd won. The fallout over the next few weeks was absolutely glorious to watch from a safe distance. First, Megan tried desperately to book another venue for the same weekend. But here's the thing about calling wedding venues 4 days before your event asking for immediate availability. They either don't have any openings or they charge you triple the normal rate because they know you're desperate and have no other options. She found exactly one place that could accommodate her on such short notice. A VFW hall that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1978. But even they wanted $16,500 cash upfront because of the last-minute nature of the booking. The problem was, Megan didn't have $16,500. She didn't even have $1,650. She tried applying for emergency credit cards to cover the costs, but her credit score was somewhere around 490 thanks to years of financial irresponsibility. Banks were literally laughing at her applications. So she did what she always does when she needs money. She started calling every family member she could think of, begging for loans. The problem was, everyone knew what had happened between us by now. And when people started asking questions like, wait, Blake paid for your entire wedding? The truth started coming out. Our cousin Jennifer called me about a week later and told me that Megan had been bragging for months about how she had me completely wrapped around her finger. Apparently, she'd been giving tutorials to other family members on manipulation techniques that worked on me. She literally said you were too stupid to realize she was using you, Jennifer told me. She called you her personal bank account with legs. She said she could make you pay for anything just by crying and acting helpless. By Sunday, the day the wedding was supposed to happen, Megan was posting Instagram stories every single hour. First, it was inspirational quotes about learning who your real family is. Then, it was Bible verses about forgiveness and betrayal. Then it devolved into straight-up manic rambling about how some people can't handle other people's success, and how jealousy makes people do evil things. The best one was a video of her crying while wearing her wedding dress, the $4,200 dress she'd bought with my money, talking about how her jealous and mentally unstable brother had destroyed the most important day of her life because he couldn't handle her happiness and success. Success, she called it. She thought marrying a finance bro constituted success. Monday night, Derek posted a very formal message on Facebook announcing that the wedding had been postponed indefinitely due to unforeseen family circumstances. His entire family had returned to Arizona, and the relationship was completely over. Megan blamed me for everything, telling anyone who would listen that I was mentally unstable and had sabotaged her wedding out of pure jealousy and spite. But here's the thing about burning bridges. Eventually, you run out of places to go. 4 weeks after the wedding that never happened, Megan's entire fake lifestyle started crumbling like a house of cards. Without Derek's family money backing her future, and without my money supporting her current lifestyle, She couldn't afford to maintain her image anymore. The BMW got repossessed after she missed 4 consecutive payments. Her credit cards got maxed out and then canceled for non-payment. Her apartment complex started eviction proceedings when she couldn't make rent, and I was no longer liable as a co-signer since I'd removed myself from the lease. She had to move back in with Mom and Steve in their double-wide trailer, which was absolutely hilarious because the place barely had room for 2 people, let alone 3 adults. But the real karma came when her Instagram presence completely collapsed. Turns out when you're not posting photos from expensive steakhouses, luxury vacations, and designer shopping trips anymore, people lose interest really fast. Her follower count went from 2,100 to about 750 in less than a month. The engagement on her posts dropped to basically nothing because her content had gone from living my best life to crying videos about family betrayal. Megan tried desperately to get a job, but she had 0 work experience and no marketable skills whatsoever. Her resume was basically, looked pretty on Instagram for 6 years. She applied to be a hostess at Olive Garden, and they didn't even call her back. Meanwhile, my life was improving dramatically. I took all the money I'd been wasting on Megan's ridiculous lifestyle and put a down payment on a nice condo. Nothing fancy, but it's mine, and I love it. I also bought a new truck and started dating a woman named Jessica, who works as a nurse and actually has her own career and money. When Jessica found out what had happened with my family, she was absolutely shocked. Your sister literally called you her personal ATM and they still expected you to pay for her wedding? That's pretty much the size of it. Blake, that's not a family. That's a financial abuse situation. She wasn't wrong about that assessment. About 3 months after the wedding disaster, I was at Home Depot buying supplies for a bathroom renovation when I ran into Mom. She looked like she'd aged 12 years in 3 months. Blake, we really need to talk. No, we really don't. Your sister is struggling. Really, really struggling. Good. Maybe she'll learn something from it. She's been severely depressed ever since Derek left. She barely gets out of bed most days. Maybe she should try getting a job like normal people do. Mom grabbed my arm desperately. Blake, please, she's your sister! She made some mistakes, but she's still family. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. Mom, let me explain something to you. Megan didn't make mistakes. She ran a systematic con game on me for 9 years. She stole my money, lied to my face about what she was spending it on, and then bragged about manipulating me to her friends online. That's not a mistake. That's deliberate financial abuse. She's learned her lesson. Has she? Has she actually apologized for what she did? Has she admitted that her behavior was wrong, or is she just sorry that she got caught and lost her meal ticket? Mom couldn't answer that question. That's what I thought, I said and walked away. But the real breaking point came in January. Christmas had always been a big deal in our family. Even after Mom and Dad divorced, we'd all get together at Mom's place for dinner and the traditional gift exchange. It was one of the few times everyone pretended to get along and act like a normal, functional family. This year, I wasn't planning to go. Jessica and I were going to spend the holidays with her family in Utah, which sounded infinitely more appealing than dealing with my dysfunctional relatives. But Dad called me the week before Christmas and asked if I'd reconsider. I know things are really bad between you and the others, he said quietly, but I miss having Christmas with my son. It's not the same without you there. Dad's a good man. He never asked me for money, never treated me like an ATM, never took sides in family drama. If he wanted me there, I'd make the effort for his sake. I showed up on Christmas Eve carrying presents for Dad and a bottle of sparkling cider for dinner. Megan was there, and the transformation was absolutely shocking. She'd gained at least 35 pounds since I'd last seen her. Her hair looked like she hadn't washed it in a week, and she was wearing sweatpants that looked like she'd been sleeping in them for days. 7 months ago, she was posting Instagram selfies every day, acting like some kind of celebrity influencer. Now she looked like she'd been hit by a freight train and left on the side of the road. Mom had clearly told everyone to be on their best behavior because dinner was awkward but relatively peaceful. Megan barely spoke during the meal. She just pushed food around her plate and stared at her phone with dead, lifeless eyes. After dinner, Mom started the traditional gift exchange. It was mostly small stuff: gift cards, books, bottles of fancy olive oil. When it came to Megan's turn to give out gifts, she handed everyone plain white envelopes. "I made these myself," she said quietly, not making eye contact with anyone. Inside the envelopes were handwritten IOUs. Good for one home-cooked dinner when I get back on my feet. Good for one day of babysitting when I find steady employment. good for help with household chores when I have my own place again. It was actually kind of pathetic to see how far she'd fallen. Then Megan handed me an envelope that was noticeably thicker than the others. "Blake," she said, looking directly at me for the first time all evening. "I wrote you something special. Would you please read it out loud? I want everyone to hear this." "Megan, I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, I need everyone to hear what I have to say." I opened the envelope and found a 6-page handwritten letter. Megan nodded at me to start reading, so I began. "Blake, I know you probably hate me more than anyone has ever hated another person, and I know I deserve every bit of that hatred. I've spent the last 7 months thinking about what I did to you, and I finally understand how horrible I was." I looked up at Megan. She was crying, but not the fake manipulative tears I was used to seeing from her. These looked real. "I manipulated you for years. I treated you like a bank account instead of a brother. I stole money you gave me for wedding expenses and spent it on myself. I bragged to my friends about how easy it was to get money out of you. I called you my personal ATM machine and laughed about how I could make you pay for anything just by crying." The room was completely silent. Even Steve wasn't running his mouth for once. "I never saw you as a person with your own needs and dreams. I only saw you as someone who existed to fund my lifestyle and make my problems disappear. I convinced myself that you owed me that money because you were my brother, like being related to me meant you were obligated to pay for my life." Megan's voice was getting shaky, but she gestured for me to keep reading. "I lost Derek because he finally realized what kind of person I really am. I lost my friends because they were only around for the money and free stuff. I lost my apartment, my car, my entire lifestyle. But the worst thing I lost was my brother's love and respect, and I know I can never get that back." She pulled out another piece of paper from her purse. "I've been working with a therapist, and she helped me write down everything I did wrong. Every lie I told, every dollar I stole, every manipulation I used. I want you to have this as proof of what I did, in writing, so you know I'm finally being honest about everything." It was a detailed, signed confession of everything. Every lie, every stolen dollar, every manipulation technique she'd used on me over the years. "Blake, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to ever want to see me again. I know I destroyed the most important relationship in my life because I was selfish and greedy and entitled. But I needed you to know that I finally understand what I lost." Megan stood up from the table. "I also want everyone to know that I'm leaving Nevada. I got accepted into a dental hygienist program in Tucson. It's the first time in my adult life that I've ever tried to accomplish something with my own efforts, using my own money that I earned from a part-time job I actually got myself." She walked over to where I was sitting. "I don't expect you to help me with school. I don't expect you to ever want a relationship with me again. But I needed you to know that I'm genuinely sorry. Not because I got caught, not because I need something from you, but because I finally hate who I was and what I did to the best person in my life." Megan hugged Dad, gave Mom a quick kiss on the cheek, and walked out of the house. I sat there holding her confession letter, not sure what to feel. The silence lasted about 45 seconds before Mom broke it. "Blake, you could help her with school expenses. Give her a chance to start over and prove she's changed." I looked at Mom like she'd completely lost her mind. "Mom, did you not hear a single word of what she just said? She spent 9 years systematically using and manipulating me. One apology doesn't erase that. But she's really trying to change and improve herself. That's great for her. She can change and improve on her own dime." I folded up the confession letter and put it in my jacket pocket. Not because I was planning to use it legally, but because it felt like closure. Megan left for Tucson 3 weeks later. I haven't heard from her since, and I don't want to. 16 months later, I'm engaged to Jessica. We're planning a small wedding next spring. Maybe 45 people, nothing fancy or expensive. Just family and friends who actually care about us as people, not as walking wallets or sources of entertainment. Dad's going to walk me down the aisle since Mom can't be bothered to show up to events she's not paying for. Megan obviously won't be there. I heard through the family grapevine that she's doing okay in her dental hygienist program. She's working part-time at a dental office and living in a tiny studio apartment. Apparently, she's lost weight, deleted all her social media accounts, and actually seems to be building a real life for herself. Good for her, I guess, but that's not my problem or responsibility anymore. People sometimes ask me if I regret how everything went down. If I feel bad about ruining Megan's wedding and destroying her relationship with Derek? The answer is absolutely not. I didn't ruin her wedding. Her own greed, entitlement, and manipulation ruined her wedding. I just stopped being her victim. The best part about all of this? My life is infinitely better without her in it. I've got money in the bank for the first time in years. I have a woman who loves me for who I am, rather than what I can provide financially. And I have a real family now, Dad and Jessica's relatives, who treat me like a human being instead of a financial resource. Megan can keep her apology letter and her promises to change. I've got everything I need without her. TLDR. My sister spent 9 years treating me like her personal ATM, culminating in me funding her $49,200 wedding while she bragged online about manipulating me. When her family uninvited me from the wedding but still expected me to pay, I canceled everything 4 days before the event. Her entire fake lifestyle collapsed, her fiancé left her, and she had to move back in with our mom. She eventually apologized and left the state, but I'm done with her forever. My life is much better now. Much better. Edit. Thanks for all the support, everyone. A few people have asked if I'd ever consider reconciling with Megan. The answer is no. Financial abuse is still abuse, and family doesn't excuse that behavior. I'm moving forward with my life and don't need that toxicity back in it. Edit 2. For those asking about the confession letter, I still have it, but I've never needed to use it legally. It was more about having closure than anything else. And yes, Jessica thinks I handled the situation appropriately. She's actually the one who helped me realize that what happened was financial abuse, not just family drama.